to strike root in new soil. Today, I am sharing a book that has been a part of my life for a long time, one of my all time favorites, Unaccustomed Earth by Jhumpa Lahiri. Welcome to Pages and Afterwords. My name is Lili. This is a place where I give voice to the feelings, questions, and lingering echoes that remain after finishing a book. There will be no polished reviews or deep academic analysis here, just my honest thoughts and casual reflections on the books I read. So let's get started. Welcome back to Pages and Afterwards, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you're having a wonderful week. So today, I will be introducing or talking about one of my all-time favorite books, Unaccustomed Earth by Jhumpa Lahiri. This is actually the second time I read this book, and I would talk about how much I love this book. So let me give you a quick synopsis on this. So this book is a collection of stories that explores the lives of Bengali American families, but they consist mostly of short stories. So it's not like one big book. And the book mainly consists of two parts. So the first half is short stories with different protagonists. And the stories or the protagonist, unlike a lot of the, short stories books or how do you call it? Like a film, like Valentine's Day, or a film like what's the name? The Christmas movie. What's the name? With Hugh Grant in it. Love Actually. So like they have their own stories, but like they are all kind of coming together at the end. It's not like that. So like the protagonists of stories do not relate to each other, but they just exist on their own within that particular story. And the second part is a short novella of two people, Hema and Kaushik. I hope I am pronouncing their names right. So those are the main parts. And then the title, Unaccustomed Earth, comes from a Nathaniel Hawthorne quote about how we need to strike root in new soil to thrive. And that's exactly what these characters are trying to do. The stories mostly follow the second generation of immigrants who are caught between their parents' traditional roots in India and their own modern lives in places like Seattle or Cambridge. So that's generally the synopsis of the book. And let me give you a bit more details on the second part with Hema and Kaushik. So we see them meet as children, they lose touch, and then they cross paths again years later. And the second part is a beautiful look at fate and their struggles to find their rock. And style-wise or writing-wise, Lahiri doesn't rely on huge dramatic plot twist. There isn't any. But beneath the suburban lives that these characters lead, you see glimpse of sometimes grief and sometimes the struggle to find where home actually is when you're constantly moving between two cultures. So let me go into my thoughts and feelings. So first of all, I love Jhumpa Lahiri. She's one of my favorite writers. And I discovered this particular book, Unaccustomed Earth, when I was a uni student, and I immediately fell in love. Since then, I've read multiple books by her, but Unaccustomed Earth is still my number one favorite from her. And not only that, it is one of my all-time favorite books. So the first time I read this, I was particularly moved by the opening story about a Bengali American woman married to a non-Indian American guy with whom she has a son. And she hosts her father at their home, temporarily. Her dad was visiting her at home. and they depict some kind of family conflicts deriving from them being different generations of immigrants. And this story just kind of hit me hard because I was taking Sociology 101 like a couple of years before I read this book, and this just reminded me of learning a theory about generational conflicts in immigrant families. The concept is known as, I think, three generation hypothesis, if I remember correctly, which refers to like a specific cycle of cultural loss and recovery within the immigrant families. So the first generation, the immigrants themselves, struggled to survive in the, well, so to speak, an unaccustomed earth. A lot of the times clinging to their native language and customs for security. And then the second generation, in the opening episode, is about this Bengali woman. They often feel caught in a clash between two cultures. And they often try to distance themselves from their parents' old world ways, so to speak, to fit into the new society, which leads to a loss of language and traditions. And in the third generation, the grandchildren of the first generation, generally having successfully integrated into the new society and feeling relatively secure in their identity as like citizens of that new country, they often feel a sense of loss of their original culture. So they begin to romanticize and seek out the origins that their parents or the second generation tried to hide. Like, although I myself was not an immigrant in the same sense as these people who are captured in Lahiri's book, but it still spoke to me as a foreigner relocating to another country on my own for higher education. I did not feel loss of my identity, as I was like old enough that my identity and mother tongue were solidified by the time I chose to relocate. So I am different in that sense. Like, a lot of the times immigrant families or the second generation are the one immigrate to another country when they're very young, and that has to do with their parents' decision. So they don't really have a say. They don't really choose to relocate, right? So that's the difference between these cultures and me. And I had a clear route to look back to, which I believe perhaps made navigating in a new country safer. But I also wonder if it made me more sensitive to the frictions between my own culture and in the new culture that I'm experiencing as an adult. Obviously, I knew exactly where I belonged, but I still felt that sharp feeling or like realization of being a foreigner first in a new country. I felt like this mostly in Europe or where I studied, because my course mates were predominantly white or European. But then interestingly, there was California. So I went to visit my friends in California during uni, and there I did not feel like I need to express that I am indeed Japanese at all, because I kind of just blended in. And it was actually a relief. Like, I didn't even know that I was feeling this tension within myself, that like of being a foreigner first, like how much of a relief it was to blend in. I I sort of hesitated to share this, or I thought about not sharing this in this podcast, because I know for many, like, identity is like something that you fight for to be seen. And like, my relief in being blended in or being sort of like invisible might sound dismissive or like even offensive. But like, to be completely honest, there was a strange comfort in not having to explain myself for once. And it made me realize how heavy the foreigner label can feel when you are regarded that every day. And it was really nice for once when I was in California that I was at the till, and then the person doesn't ask where I was from because I looked like a lot of people there. Anyway, yeah, so that's the kind of feeling that I had, and most like particularly the opening story of the first half, like resonated with me. Like that opening episode is still the one that I specifically remember from the first time I read the book during uni. And in the second half of the book, I actually did not remember as much from the first time I read it. But this time around, I really, really liked it. As I was looking at some notes and highlights I took while reading in preparation for this podcast episode, I realized that most of them were related to Kaushik. He was born in America, but went back to India as a boy and returned to America as a teenager and stayed there ever since. And now he is a photographer for renowned newspapers, and he travels a lot for work, right? And he relocated multiple times, like across mostly South America, Europe, and now on his way to Asia. And there is a sentence that left an impression on me. So, quote, "He had so little to do with India. He had not gone back since the year his mother died, had never gone there for work. As a photographer, his origins were irrelevant, and yet, in Rome, in all of Europe, he was always regarded as an Indian first." End of quote. So the context is when he was invited for a dinner party in Rome at a journalist friend's house, where, because of the nature of their work, the guests were very like diverse and international, and where like multiple languages are spoken over the table. But he is still feeling like this, even though his friends and his, colleagues are international. And what resonated with me a lot is that even for Kaushik, who moved across countries like without much say while younger and as an adult with a clear intention of his own to move across cultures, even for him, it gets tiring to carry the label every day. It had this it left me this quiet impression on me. And it's really hard to put into words, but I think it's the beauty of Lahiri's writing. It's not dramatic, but the writing is so brilliant that you are most likely to feel something within yourself. And let me give you one more quote. And this is also about Kaushik. Quote, "He was reminded of his family's moves every time he visited another refugee camp, every time he watched a family combing through rubble for their possessions. In the end, that was life. A few plates, a favorite comb, a pair of slippers, and a child's string of beads." This hit me hard as well because even though you constantly move across different cultures or unaccustomed earth growing up, life eventually strips down to the bare essentials or memories or memorable objects. Like when you don't have a fixed place, your home isn't a country or specific place anymore. It's just what you can carry with you. So that's how I interpreted this sentence, and this was another favorite line in the book. So yeah, that's it for my thoughts and feelings. Have you ever felt that your origins were irrelevant in your mind, only to be reminded by how others see you? I would love to hear your thoughts on finding your own route in an unaccustomed earth. So, thank you so much for listening today. I hope this episode gave you something to think about, or perhaps inspired you to read a book. If you enjoyed our time together, please hit the follow button or like it. It really helps me keep going. So I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.